Will Folsom become a disaster zone from wildfire? We have lived in Folsom, California for over 35 years. Folsom used to be a sleepy little town with a few stoplights. Exits off of Highway 50 took us down country roads that led into town. Folsom was a town where the DMV was mostly empty. You could walk in and get well taken care of and leave just moments later. It was amazing. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case. Folsom has become a very densely packed suburban community with lots of amenities and associated risks with a growing population of about 85,000 residents. The largest risk to our town of Folsom is hidden in plain sight. I believe it to be a fire risk. There's lots of vegetation, overgrowth, and a large amount of dead organic material in and around our open spaces and along our bike paths here in Folsom and in the adjacent parks at Lake Natoma and Folsom Lake. We will get back to that in a moment. Let's learn a little bit about Folsom. The city of Folsom was incorporated in 1946, and the city's history dates back much further. The Southern Maidu and Nisenan indigenous people called this area home. The city's Nisenan Community Park honors that history. The first gold seekers, known as the 49ers, flocked to the sites along the American River in 1849 and facilitated California's admission as a state in the Union in 1850. The discovery of gold at John Sutter's Mill in nearby Coloma attracted prospectors to the region from around the world, hoping to strike it rich. African Americans were among the first to set up a mining camp in Folsom along the American River, which is now under Lake Natoma. The name of this area has been changed to Black Miners Bar to comply with social pressures. Mining operations spread throughout the Sierra Nevada foothills, making the prospect of building a railroad from Sacramento to Folsom an attractive enterprise to ferry supplies for miners and to transport passengers. Folsom was named after Captain Joseph Libby Folsom, who was born in Meredith, New Hampshire. He graduated from West Point and arrived in California with Colonel Stevenson's 1st Regiment of New York Volunteers, March 6, 1847, to serve as quartermaster at San Francisco. When William Leadersdorf, a San Francisco businessman and civic leader, died in 1848, his estate included a 35,000-acre Mexican land grant. Captain Folsom purchased the estate from the Leadersdorf heirs and hired Theodore Judah, railway engineer and surveyor, to lay out the town he called Granite City. The town was recorded in Sacramento County, December 28, 1855. Captain Folsom died July 19, 1855, and his trustees changed the town name to Folsom. The influx of gold seekers sailing into San Francisco Bay created a demand for transportation to serve miners in the mountains. The Sacramento Valley Railroad was organized by a group of San Francisco businessmen in 1852. Charles Lincoln Wilson, who owned a steamship company, a toll road and bridges, was the inspiration. Wilson hired Theodore Judah to lay out the 22-mile railroad route from Sacramento to Folsom. The railroad made its first official run on February 22, 1856. Today, electric-powered light rail trains run from Sacramento to Folsom on the line laid out by Judah. In 1895, hydroelectric power generated in Folsom was the first long-distance transmission of electricity from the Folsom Powerhouse, traveling over 22 miles to Sacramento. Folsom Dam construction began in 1948 and finished in 1955, which created Folsom Lake. Lake Natoma was ready for the public in 1958. Folsom Dam and Lake Natoma provided flood protection for Sacramento and hydroelectric power. It also provides water for domestic, commercial, and industrial use. A state park now surrounds both lakes. The dam ushered in a surge of growth known as Folsom's Second Gold Rush, as Folsom became a center for mining, transportation, and jobs managing the dam, producing hydroelectric power, providing flood protection for Sacramento, and supplying water for domestic, agricultural, commercial, and industrial use. Folsom has become popular and is famous for its stunning bridges across the American River and Lake Natoma. They include the historic Truss Bridge for pedestrian traffic, Rainbow Bridge, and Lake Natoma Crossing. Lake Natoma offers great views of nature, hiking, bike paths, water sports, and other outdoor recreation. The historic Truss Bridge opened in 1893, which is now a pedestrian bridge and is a connection to the American River Parkway. At one time, the bridge transported people, cattle, and vehicles across the American River. The 4-lane wide Folsom Lake Crossing Bridge opened on March 28, 2009, and provided an alternative route that replaced the narrow 2-lane road that crossed the lake on Folsom Dam. Rat Pack member Sammy Davis Jr. performed at Folsom Prison in 1961. The talented singer, actor, and dancer treated prisoners to the same show he performed for Queen Elizabeth 6 days earlier. Johnny Cash performed at Folsom Prison in January 1968, which was a turning point and saved his career. His album, Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison, was released in May of 1968, eventually selling over 3 million albums. The Johnny Cash Trail and bike pedestrian overcrossing opened in 2014. The Robbers Ravine Bike Pedestrian Bridge was added when the second phase of the trail opened in 2017. The Pony Express ran from April 1860 to October 1861 as the 10-day delivery mail service from Missouri to California. The Pony Express had 150 relay stations, with its western terminus located here in the historic section of Folsom on Sutter Street. Today, you can get a taste of history in Folsom's revitalized historic district with dining, shopping, antique stores, and a vibrant nightlife surrounded by the historic architecture. The Folsom Historical Society operates 2 museums in Folsom, the Folsom History Museum and Pioneer Village. The Folsom Historic District is also home to the future Folsom Chinese Heritage Museum, dedicated to sharing the rich history of the Chinese in Folsom in California. It is time to dive into the reason for this video. Will Folsom become a victim to an urban wildfire? 1974 was my first visit to Lahaina, Maui. It was a cute, charming, and historic whaling village with shops and souvenirs for all the tourists. Located right on the water, with an historic sailing and whaling ship at the dock, made the entire backdrop amazing. It was like going back 100 years, and I could feel what it must have been like when it was an active whaling town. Lahaina had evolved into an amazing community. The massive banyan tree in the town center provided an amazing amount of shade, covering 1.94 acres, and has been growing since it was planted in Lahaina on April 24, 1873. This is a living historic landmark. I remember that it seemed like every third store was another Crazy Shirt store, but it didn't matter. It was so cool to be here in the 1970s. Unfortunately, Lahaina looked like a tinderbox 50 years ago. My dad and I talked about this and discussed what preventative measures could have been done to prevent the inevitable. The sad part is that the town of Lahaina and the government of Maui had 50 years to put in fire preventative measures to protect this historic town, and they did not. As you know, Lahaina burned to the ground under questionable conditions on August 23, 2023. Yes, the winds were high, but the circumstances of how the fire started and how the fire was managed was, well, let's say, not entirely clear. It is terrible to have lost Lahaina, its history, and the loss of life and a cherished community. Paradise was another amazing community in California that was completely lost due to the Camp Fire, displacing the entire population and destroying an entire town. Now, several cities in the greater Los Angeles area have been burned. Again, there were high winds, but the circumstances of how the fire started are, well, let's say not entirely clear. And it was all preventable. Is Folsom at risk to become a victim of an urban fire disaster? Let's take a look. Folsom has over 50 miles of bike trails all over town, which is an amazing amenity. Our bike trails and our open spaces in many areas have unmaintained dense growth of vegetation and brush and a variety of trees that are often adjacent to residential and commercial buildings. In addition, we have many oak trees that have died and have fallen and are presently left in place to decay. Folsom is an amazing place to live, and it is such a blessing to have such an intermix of wild and urban life within walking distance of just about anywhere in town. This, however, creates a risk in that if there is a fire, it could easily jump from one location to another as everything is fairly close together. We do get high winds in this area from time to time, and with an excessive fuel load in these unmaintained spaces, it is possible that it can go from being just okay to another disaster zone, if and when the conditions were just right, or wrong, depending on your point of view. We have extremely hot summers here in Folsom, with many days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The brush and the grass dry out in the summer months, and we have acres and acres of golden brown dry grass 1 to 2 feet tall. Given the high number of fallen oaks and other fuel sources, it is cause for concern. A cord of live oak is about 36 million BTUs of energy. It takes about a pound of water per 1 BTU of heat of energy. 1 pound of water is about 1 pint. Therefore, 1 cord of live oak, representing 36 million BTUs of energy, will require about 4.3 million gallons of water to extinguish. Granted that the volume of wood in a cord does not burn all at once, the progressive consumption of wood in a fire over time creates that 36 million BTUs of energy in the form of heat. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of uncut cords of live oak in the open spaces in and around Folsom and Lake Natoma. With the volume of dead oak in our open spaces, this large fuel load could turn a simple grass fire into something much larger, making it much more difficult or impossible to put out. At an Empire Ranch HOA meeting in 2025, it was stated that the beavers in the area cause lots of damage and that there's a concerted effort to capture and relocate them. Their dams are removed and the beaver ponds are eliminated. In the same presentation, it was also stated that the dead oaks are allowed to decay naturally. Wait, what? We capture and remove the living beings, and we intentionally leave dead oak trees to decay? I'm not sure I understand. It can take decades for a full-size oak tree to decompose naturally. Dead anything is an eyesore, and a giant oak tree decaying season after season just makes the area look neglected. A simple grass fire can turn into an out-of-control wildfire due to this additional fuel load. If there's any breeze, embers can travel, starting additional spot fires. This increases the fire risk that can be easily mitigated if the dead whatever is removed. Given the volume of additional fuel load in and around the Folsom neighborhoods, our parks, and around Lake Natoma, Folsom could easily become the next fire disaster story. Like Lahaina, Paradise, and Los Angeles, all of this is preventable just by removing the dead material. Not only would our areas look better, the risk of an out-of-control wildfire goes down exponentially. Modern forest management and the environmental movement have been incorrect in leaving organic material on the forest floor. Over time, this cumulative buildup of organic material creates an incredible fuel load that makes fighting wildfires difficult to impossible. It is because of this high fuel load that we have now witnessed fire tornadoes. This has nothing to do with climate change, but of forest mismanagement. Many, including myself, have been stating that the organic material on the forest floor needs to be removed to mitigate fire risk. Could it be as simple as removing the fuel load, especially around urban areas, and establish high-pressure sprinkler systems for homes that border areas prone to fire risk? Yes, I know they will say it takes money. No, I say it takes civic leadership and political will to get the respective parties together and establish plans to move them forward to defend our urban communities from fire risk. How many more towns need to burn down before we take additional preventative actions? While maintenance can be expensive, it's less expensive than losing everything to a wild or urban fire. Per the Google AI overview, the American River Parkway, which runs alongside the American River from Folsom to Sacramento, has seen a significant number of fires, with data indicating over 200 fires occurring in 2021 alone, burning more than 15% of the parkway area. Most, if not all of these fires are considered human-caused, and our homeless population is responsible for most. The Sierra Club, through public record requests, obtained reports from the agencies responsible for the fire protection on the American River Parkway. The club's analysis found that in the 6 years from 2016 through 2021, the departments responded to 536 fires in the parkway. Approximately 1,266 acres burned during this time, more than a quarter of the parkway. Most of these fires occur on the Sacramento section of the parkway, and the increase in fires coincide with the stop of the enforcement of the anti-camping ordinance, in other words, the homeless. Most, if not all, of these fires are from our homeless population, and there's a homeless contingent here in Folsom that is also responsible for an increase in crime and fire damage along the bike trail. Regardless of what might be the cause or the problem, we need a new approach. We need to remove the dead fuel load to prevent grass fires from becoming massive forest/urban fires. Thinning out the areas with dense vegetation would help the remaining trees grow larger, as they would not have to compete for resources with the surrounding foliage. Larger trees can withstand small grass fires, and larger trees provide a better shade canopy, which everyone enjoys on a hot summer day. What you see here is not natural. It is neglect and a human interference with natural grass fires that clear out small growth, leaving carbon in the soil and allowing larger trees room to grow and expand. To complicate matters, there are other concerns regarding the removal of dead oak. There are diseases such as sudden oak death caused by a fungus-like organism and/or insects that kill oak trees. Removal of an infected oak tree becomes complicated, as moving the lumber can spread both the disease and/or insects that killed the tree in the first place. At the moment, I have been unable to find clear guidance on the identification of what caused the tree to die, other than to hire an arborist to investigate. The process of removal is also not clearly identified, but to think that leaving a dead tree to lie in place for decades as it decomposes is a good plan seems contrary to maintaining the open spaces. Remember that many years ago, it was very common for a low flame front to burn through an area and consume the grass and the dead fuel on the ground that may be infected with fungus or insects. Fire will kill the fungus and insects that are a threat to oak trees. Since we prevent grass fires from happening, which is a natural process, this creates collateral problems such as the widespread fungus and insect infestations. It is stated that the diagnosis of infected trees and proper disposal of contaminated wood and other materials are essential to limiting the spread of the disease. Management options include the treatment with phosphonate compounds and selective plant removal. Are we doing that? I spoke to a representative within our government who shared that certain laws prevent the removing of organic material without an environmental study. Seems to me that we have the power to change the laws that do not serve our community. It has occurred to me that no matter how compelling an argument I can make to have the dead oak and shrubbery removed, the established thoughts within the HOAs, cities, fire departments, state parks, and other agencies who might be responsible for these areas are not willing to take on anything voluntarily that might bring them more work and/or additional cost. There is one group that can make and force a positive change. Historically, this is the same group that has helped establish safety standards in the workplace to mitigate risks to protect equipment and workers. Believe it or not, this is the insurance companies. If the insurance companies require that as a condition of insurance coverage, the dead and diseased fuel load be removed, it will get removed. Those who hold insurance policies would not want their coverage to be jeopardized, and thereby the work would get performed. In the meantime, what can be done? For homeowners, clear out any dead brush or dry grass in and around the property. Clear open spaces of tall dead grass. Goats and sheep do a great job with weed abatement. Homeowners can get portable sprinklers and hoses so that if there is a fire, sprinklers can be turned on to water the roof of the house and the immediate surrounding area and let run to reduce the heat and possibility of ignition. Homeowner associations and the city of Folsom can contract to have goats run around our open spaces much more during the spring and early summer to knock down and remove much of the growth. We need to advocate that our open spaces receive more attention and maintenance so that we do not become another tragic statistic. There are those who say that Folsom is not like Lahaina, Paradise, Los Angeles, or other areas that succumb to fires. Well, that might be, but what is true is that combustible materials burn the same everywhere in the world, even in Folsom. To conclude this presentation, I offer that I hope that I am completely wrong, that my concerns are unfounded and that we never experience a fire in the Folsom area like we have seen across many parts of California and the world. However, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I hope that you feel free to share your thoughts and concerns in the comments. Thanks for watching.